produced in high definition by Fox 50. Viewer discretion is advised.
Windsor is a very small town. It's a quiet, very community-oriented town, and the store is on the major highway.
As you enter the door, you start seeing drag marks and blood extending from the front of the store up to the office area. And we saw the 3 bodies that were lying there, covered in blood. They were bound and shot.
There will always be questions, but never any answers until we find this individual.
And if you want additional personnel, meet us at Belo.
Tonight, this composite may unlock Windsor's shocking multiple homicide. NC Wanted in high definition starts now.
Good evening, I'm Gerald Owens. Welcome to NC Wanted. Each week we profile wanted fugitives on the run from justice in our courts. Tonight, a deranged killer continues to roam free and avoid his day in court. It's one of the most shocking unsolved multiple homicides in North Carolina history. On June 6, 1993, a gunman terrorized 6 employees inside a Belo grocery store in Bertie County. The grotesque and bizarre way the victims were executed still torments their surviving family members.
I just remember the smell of the blood because there was a lot of blood in there.
Walked in the store, myself and Agent Ransom. Began to see blood trails almost immediately. Followed the blood trails back to a point in the rear of the store, at which time we observed 3 bodies.
14 years later, what happened inside the Belo grocery store still haunts the quiet town of Windsor. It's Sunday night, June 6, 1993, around 6 o'clock. Store manager Grover Cecil, cashier Joyce Coburn, and 4 members of the cleaning crew start their nightly closing routine. But that routine is interrupted when an unmasked gunman approaches Coburn and demands to see Mr. Cecil.
Once he had the attention of the manager, he told him it was a robbery.
After raiding cash register drawers and the store safe, the suspect collects $3,000 in cash and money orders. Unfortunately, he doesn't stop there.
He then walked the manager and the clerk to the last aisle of the store. Had the manager to then call the supervisor and 3 other workers for the cleaning crew.
All 6 gather and brace for the gunman's orders.
He had the manager to tape up each of the other 5. And then he taped up the manager. Had them all to lie on the floor. Had them to arrange themselves in 3 sets of 2s.
Once the 6 are bound, the gunman tells them a story about his hard times.
He's had a drug deal to go bad. Sorry.
He was very calm, never raised his voice, never got excited, never acted angry. Told them that he had lost his job as a result of a drug deal that had gone bad.
Then the unthinkable.
He commented, "I hope God will forgive me for what I'm about to do."
Using just 3 bullets, he fires once into each of the 3 piles, killing each victim unfortunate to be on top. One bullet travels through the body of cashier Joyce Coburn and pierces Tony Welch lying beneath her.
After firing the first 3 shots, he fired a 4th shot. Either the gun malfunctioned or he was out of bullets or something happened with the gun.
Then an already bizarre scene takes another twist as the killer rolls his victims into a straight row of 6.
He went to one of the victims that appeared not to be hurt.
Are you going to tell the police who I am?
No.
Of course, the victim said no. Suspect then went to the back of the store where they have a set of double sinks. He retrieved a butcher knife, went back to where the victims were, had a conversation with the brother of the victim he had just spoken with.
Are you going to tell the police who I am? No, man. I don't believe you.
Stabbed him in the back, hard enough to break the butcher knife blade off into his back. He then looked at what we call victim number 6 and said, "I'm gonna let you live, you'll be a hero."
The killer grabs the knife, the store keys, and his stash of money, then seemingly vanishes forever. He leaves behind 1 victim uninjured, 2 seriously hurt, and 3 dead.
There was no need for killing. They followed the orders that were given in hopes of keeping their lives.
Why? Why did you do it so brutally? If you wanted the money, just take the money and go. Why did you have to murder them the way you did?
Bleeding and barely alive, Tony Welch drags himself to the back office and calls 911.
It was probably the worst crime scene I've seen in my career. It was unreal.
EMS arrives first, followed by a team of investigators.
We began looking at the bindings on the wrists of the victims and began looking for any kind of evidence as far as the gunshot. We went through the store and we went through every single shelf that there was, looking for any items that might have been out of place. And at that time, they were either seized for further documentation and processing, or they were processed on the scene. There was a lot of evidence that was taken as far as blood evidence. There was trace evidence that was collected. There were firearms evidence. There was a lot of fingerprint evidence that was obtained. Fingerprints that were developed have been run through APHIS time and time again, and probably will continue to be run through, because as more fingerprint cards are added, the more chance that some of the fingerprints might be linked. There were drag marks in blood on the floor, which extended all the way from the front all the way to the back. There were also some shoe impressions in blood, which were also photographed, documented, and later they were chemically processed also to enhance them and rephotographed at that time. On one set of shoes, we were able to eliminate them as being an EMS member, but we had other evidence that did not belong to them also.
This leaves investigators to believe the shoe imprint could belong to the killer. While evidence is submitted to the lab, detectives in the field work tirelessly to identify the man responsible for the triple murders. They begin a process of elimination.
For the first 4 months, we worked this case as if it was an ex-police officer or ex-military person.
Based on the gunman's story about how he lost his job from a bad drug deal, investigators determined 2 possible scenarios. 1, the killer once worked in law enforcement. Or two, he's somehow connected to the drug trade in Windsor.
At the time, I'm afraid still do have a pretty serious drug problem around here. Initially, a lot of people thought maybe it was just somebody that needed some drugs and went in there and maybe things got out of hand.
As the investigation continues, they intensify their focus on one man in the Windsor community.
Well, his name came up in several interviews with people in the area. As far as his physical characteristics, maybe with the first drawing of the suspect, he may have favored it a little bit with the block haircut and everything. He had an alibi that checked out. And his name has come up many times since then, but there's just nothing to tie him in with the Belo murders.
Right now we've got several teams of detectives out following up leads.
Investigators won't give details, but
then, after 4 months of working the case around the clock, investigators received word in September of 1993 of a similar execution-style shooting at a food line in Raleigh. In their minds, it could be the break they've been waiting for.
Attention, Bertie Rescue, checking for traffic. We have 1033 traffic, 1033 traffic at Belo's in Windsor. Subject has been shot.
Okay, we're going to be taking the one at Belo then. Advise Unit 2 to rush it up.
June 6, 1993 in Bertie County. Life is disrupted in the quaint town of Windsor, where 6 people became victims of a bloody slaughter in the Belo grocery store. Under heavy media attention and months of around-the-clock investigation, detectives gathered dozens of leads, but nothing pans out.
detectives hope to piece the clues together to come up with a picture of the killers.
Then 4 months later, in September of '93, detectives are alerted of another incident of execution-style homicides at a Raleigh food line. They wonder if the killer is developing a signature pattern.
Well, I think there were a couple of similarities.
Like the Belo murders, investigators believe the killer hid inside the food line until closing time. After robbing the store, he took the manager and the office assistant to the back, then made them lie on the floor. After he shot and killed both, he placed one in the cooler, the other in the back of the store. But further investigation finds the two cases are not connected. 2 men are arrested and convicted of the Raleigh murder. Despite the outcome, investigators keep digging in hopes of uncovering the Belo suspect's identity.
We've looked at employees that were fired, employees that had grievances, employees that left and went to other stores, employees that just up and quit.
They even look at those who survived the attack, thinking perhaps they were spared for a reason.
The victim number 6, who was not hurt at all, was interviewed for several hours, with us not forgetting that he was a victim, and at the same time, us wanting to know everything that he knew in an effort to make sure he didn't have anything to do with the robbery.
However, he is soon eliminated.
None of the victims, alive or deceased, have come into play with this investigation at all as to whether or not they had some link to the suspect or they had something to do with the robbery that was done or the shootings.
Years after the Belo murders, survivor Tony Welch helps law enforcement develop a more detailed composite of the killer. Despite more specific descriptions of the suspect, people still have mixed opinions as to whether he's a local or someone just passing through.
In my heart, I feel like the individual is still there in Windsor. Somewhere, I do not know where. I feel someone knows who did this and for some reason will not come forward and tell who it is or where they are located. but my gut feelings tells me that this person is alive and he is there somewhere.
Maybe this is selective thinking. I would like to think that there was that kind of person not here.
There's a $30,000 reward, and we all feel that if he was local, then somebody would have told on him by now, or he would have told somebody else by now, and we'd have some idea as to who it is. And we don't.
During the investigation, detectives reveal the killer entered that Belo location before the night of the murders.
He was smart enough to know that there was a knife in the kitchen, which tells us that he probably went in and looked around and scoped the place out before. He picked the only place he could hide and not be seen if you were looking at the security mirrors.
They conclude the murders are premeditated by someone with a violent past.
Personally, I have a hard time believing that someone would start off a life of crime by attempting to kill 6 people. To know what that particular bullet would do. Thus stacking the bodies, also incapacitating the victim somewhat by being bound.
Investigators believe he had more than just robbery on his agenda.
We've concluded that this particular suspect went in the store with his first priority being to kill somebody, and the robbery being a secondary motive.
As far as being stacked, you can only really guess. One thing that came to mind was, did they have a shortage of ammunition in trying to use one bullet for multiple victims? It's really hard to say.
Though investigators haven't captured this cold-blooded killer, they believe this case can be solved.
The good part is that the evidence still exists. So once a suspect is developed, then we do have physical evidence that can be used.
The victims' families also remain hopeful that justice will one day be served.
For her to live through that time span, the terror, the stress that she was under, that's one of the worst things to me. It's what she had to go through. You know, my sister's death, it's a done thing. She lived, she died, her children are gone on. That's not going to change. But this can change. If he's still alive and walking around, you know, it can change for him.
My life will be empty for the rest of my life, not knowing if this man is ever caught. And I know it's asking a lot, but I ask, please, please, someone out there, let us know who did this and let them be found so they do not do it to another family and hurt another family.
Investigators tell us they recently resubmitted DNA evidence to the SBI lab. And with today's technology, it's possible they may soon find a match in the DNA database. That's because they believe someone callous enough to do this has likely committed other crimes. There's a $30,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the Belo killer. The suspect is described as a black male with a medium complexion and slender build, between 30 and 35 years old. Eyewitnesses say he had a military haircut, light brown slanted eyes, and a narrow nose bridge, which could be the result of a sports injury. Anyone with information about this case should call us toll-free at 1-866-43-WANTED. That's 1-866-439-2683. Or log on to ncwanted.com and click Report a Tip. You don't have to reveal your identity. When we come back, we'll go inside the mind of the Belo killer as we hear from the original FBI profiler who worked on this case. Stay with us. Welcome back to NC Wanted. Tonight we're focusing on a man who has eluded law enforcement and our court system for 14 years. After some searching, we were able to find the original FBI profiler who worked on the Belo murder case in Bertie County. This profiler collaborated with the SBI and Windsor law enforcement to determine the type of person who would commit such a brutal and bizarre crime.
My job was to take a look at the case in detail and try and draw a behavioral composite of the individual that might be responsible. There's no indication that any of the individuals were specifically targeted or stalked. It was a stranger-based crime. I think there certainly was a degree of premeditation involved in this. Whether he had thought it through completely or not, we may never know. I think the store was pre-selected and pre-targeted. He certainly brought a weapon with him. So I think you could certainly find some degrees of premeditation. Might it have gone a little differently than he had planned? Yes. Could he have adapted or changed as it went along? It's certainly possible. I think there's certainly psychopathic features to this individual. That is, no guilt, no empathy, no remorse. Everything is about themselves. The fact that he mentioned that he has a problem or lost a job because of a drug deal or a drug issue, it could be true. He could be planning complete misinformation, knowing that he's going to leave a victim alive and hoping to redirect the investigation in an area that would be non-productive. One of the things that we know about psychopaths in general is that they're criminally versatile. It's unlikely that this is an entry-level offense. It's unlikely this is the first crime this individual has ever committed. It's likely that he may have committed lesser crimes in the past, and those crimes have not been linked to this particular crime, or perhaps he's committed crimes like this in other jurisdictions that have yet to be linked.
In just a moment, we'll recap tonight's unsolved murder. Stay with us. Welcome back to NC Wanted. Time to recap tonight's case. It's been 14 years since the Belo murder in Bertie County, yet the person responsible is still on the loose. A $30,000 reward is waiting for the person with information that leads to an arrest and conviction. The suspect is described as a black male with a medium complexion. He's between 30 and 35 years old, has a slender build, and at the time of the crime, he had a military haircut. Eyewitnesses say he has light brown slanted eyes and a narrow nose bridge, which could be the result of a sports injury. Anyone with information about this horrific crime should call us toll-free at 1-866-43-WANTED or log on to ncwanted.com and click Report a Tip. You don't have to reveal your identity. Join us next week as we feature more unsolved cases. Remember, together we can fight to protect the quality of life we hold dear in North Carolina. I'm Gerald Owens. Good night.